A lot of us will look at some of the amazing model railroads out there and then look at our own and be a little bit frustrated. And maybe we shouldn't feel like that. It's time to talk about how to be happy with your own model railroad on Coffee and Trains. Welcome everybody to another edition of Coffee and Trains. Before we begin, I am drinking Hunter Brothers Guatemala Antigua, finishing up my bag of that, and as always I take it black with 2 sugars. So today I wanted to talk about happiness and joy in the hobby, and part of any hobby is that it brings joy and makes you happy when you are participating in it, and model railroading is no different. Now, everyone is different in what part of the hobby brings them joy, but here are some tips for being happy with your own model railroad so that the hobby can bring you even more happiness and joy. My first tip is to figure out exactly what you want out of your model railroad and what you want to do with your model railroad. And what I'm talking about is if you want to run a certain era, or if you want to run a certain locomotive, or if you want to run a certain type of locomotive, or if you want to have it do a specific thing or just be, running around a loop of track. Do you want it to be incredibly complex, or do you want it to be incredibly simple? Do you want to have loads of track or loads of scenery, or somewhere in between? Figuring out exactly what you want out of your model railroad is what is going to make you the happiest. A great example is right behind me is my railroad that I'm building. Now, part of the big thing of it is that it is in scale. Now, I've built HO scale layouts in the past, but the reason that I picked in scale is because I like a lot of scenery, and that is going to make me happier in using this model railroad for my hobby. So figuring out what you want is definitely a big step towards being happy with your own model railroad. My number 2 tip is to plan for the space that you have. And what I mean by that is I hear a lot of people saying, well, I'm waiting for it till I have enough space to build one, or I'm waiting until just the right time to build one when I have a different house or something like that. Holding off on building a model railroad of any kind before you have the space can actually take some of the joy out of the hobby. I see a lot of people that just collect the stuff and hoping that they're going to have a space to build a model railroad one day. And this is part of the reason why I built MRROne. I will link that up here as well as in the description below. MRROne is a 2-foot by 4-foot in-scale layout that shows that you don't need a ton of space to build a model railroad. And now with all of the different scales, including Z scale and even smaller, you can build a model railroad in just about any space that there is. So work with what you have now, and also the happiness comes from the work, not the end result for the most part. So if you have a small little corner in a studio apartment, you can work there. Just figure out a way that you can do this. Another great way to do this is modules. It's another reason why I really like T-Track. T-Track has really small modules that are really easy to store that you can take out and temporarily take up a lot of space. So figuring out how to work with the space you have is another way to be happy with your model railroad. My number 3 tip is to listen to the experts and learn from them. Don't just be envious of their big end result layouts. None of them started off in model railroading building these massive, huge, beautiful layouts. If you take even me for an example, which I don't consider to be on the level of the experts of our hobby, this is my 5th layout since I got back into the hobby. So this is definitely not my first layout that I'm building here. And you have to consider that. And a lot of the experts also have lots of knowledge that they are more than willing to share with people, whether it's through articles that they write, whether it is through YouTube videos that they do, or whether it's just by asking them questions if you can get in touch with them. So a lot of the experts want to share their knowledge, and they want to do that to further the hobby. And their advice and knowledge can lead you to better happiness because you're going to be learning from their mistakes, and you're going to be happy with the result you got because you took time to learn how to do it properly, and you have a better result on your model railroad. For example, scenery. If you learn a better scenery technique and you're able to apply it and you're happy with it, that's a great way to take something that you've learned from an expert and put it all together to make your model railroad better, which is going to make you happier with it. My last tip is that you have to start somewhere. None of us started by building a massive, beautiful layout to begin with. Well, there may be a few exceptions out there, but the vast majority of us have built all of these different layouts in a kind of a progression. So you have to start somewhere. Now, me personally, I've gotten just as much enjoyment of running a loop of track on some carpet versus just running a massive complex op session. I've gotten the equal amounts of enjoyment. It's all trains, and your layout does not have to be a magazine-worthy masterpiece for you to enjoy. And what I mean by that is you can do it the way that you want so that you are happy. There is no real standard of how you should do a model railroad. There are ways that you should do it if you want to achieve something such as realism, but if you don't want to achieve that and you just want to have fun with it, whatever way you build it is going to be the best way to do it. So you have to start somewhere, and you have to start learning, and you can learn from those experts, like I said in the previous tip, but you can also learn by doing, and that's just going to bring you joy because you're going to be figuring out things and it's going to make you happier. Plus, you're going to be building a model railroad. So that is another great way to be happy with your model railroad, is you just have to get started with it. So those are some of the tips that I have for being happy with your model railroad. It is a very important part of this hobby that a lot of times we don't talk about. We talk about how to do things better and how to do things that are more like things that are realistic or things like that. We don't talk about how just to be happy with what you have. And I know that's something a bit different, but it's also very important to me because a hobby is meant to bring you joy and happy. So anyways, let's get to talking to some of the coffees that you guys are drinking. Brian Page Model Train is drinking Black Rifle Coffee Company's Blackbeard's Delight, and he's drinking it straight black. That is always a great way. I am you guys with your straight black coffee. I'll just say that you guys are better coffee drinkers than I am. Guy Mason, he is a patron of mine actually on Patreon. We'll talk about that in a minute, but he is drinking ground coffee from Diddley Squat Farm. So sounds like something I have to try out right there. David F. says that he is nursing his 5 a.m. cafeteria coffee for the last 3 hours. And he says he takes it black with sweet and low. Lastly, John Aerosmith says that he has some fresh coffee that arrived today. Victoria beans ground, black with 2 sugars. And he says, cheers from the Blue Mountains, New South Wales, Australia. So thank you guys so much for watching. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons like Guy Mason right there. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. A lot of stuff goes on there. I try to keep them in advance notice of nearly everything that I am doing. So if you want to know what I'm doing well in advance of when it comes out on the YouTube channel, definitely check out my Patreon. You can join for as little as $1 a month. And if you join at the $5 level and you're a 3D printer, you get a model of the month to print yourself. So thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, drink some coffee, and happy railroading.